I have to say it. Square Enix proved me wrong. So I made a video last June talking about how Final Fantasy as a franchise was facing a bit of an identity crisis in my opinion. And I'm a bit late to making this video. I wanted to make this after Summer Games Fest went down and everything and all of the showcases. But this started off as a video of me just wanting to really talk on Final Fantasy and where it was going as a franchise, and it ended up just me, as I was writing this script, realizing I should do a sort of revision video about why I was completely wrong about the franchise facing an identity crisis. And it's crazy that 13 months after I made that video, I think that the Final Fantasy franchise is in one of the best places that it's been in years. Now, in that video from last June, I said that if they wanted to do all these different gameplay styles, they should contain them in the different numbered series. And what I meant by that was if they wanted to do, for example, the Devil May Cry style gameplay like they did in Final Fantasy 16, contain that in its own series, and you do 16-2, 16-3, etc. Now though, with us getting so many different style Final Fantasy games, I mean, yes, I understand they are kind of containing each style of gameplay in its own series, but we're getting flooded now with so many different styles of games that, like, I can't complain like I was 13 months ago. One of the most exciting announcements that we got this past June was Final Fantasy Resonance. For those unaware, this is a brand new HD 2D turn-based RPG in the Final Fantasy universe, and I couldn't be more excited for this. This is a rework of the Final Fantasy mobile game Brave Exvius, and I've seen so many people nervous about this, and honestly, I understand that, but I think you have to look back on something like Square Enix making Octopath Zero, which is a rework of Octopath Traveler Champions of the Continent, and that mobile game, and turning Octopath Zero into a great game and just a really good RPG overall. So I trust Square Enix in this regard, and just off of all the info that we've gotten about this game, I really do trust that they're going to do a good job with this, and I'm super excited for this game that's set to come out this October. Square Enix describes Resonance as having traditional turn-based combat, a fully realized world map, a massive roster of 20 plus visions, aka characters that can be equipped and function as the game's job system, and you can equip legendary characters such as Cloud, Squall, etc., and a gameplay loop heavily inspired by the Final Fantasy V job system blended with Final Fantasy VI character traits. This is truly a fantastic thing for all turn-based RPG fans, and while there's plenty that I'm excited to play from now until the end of 2026, this game will certainly be one that I'm willing to drop whatever I'm playing at that time, you know, just to play this. And this is one that I'm going to drop everything for sure. Speaking of the FF5 job system and the FF6 character traits, in Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3, which we now know as Final Fantasy VII Revelation, it seems that we're going to be getting those same systems, or systems inspired by those two in that game. Now, I couldn't be more excited for the FIT system that we will be seeing in FF7 Revelation. The FIT system stands for Function Integrated Tactical Suit Wear, and you can equip different quote-unquote fits that fundamentally alter a character's base stats, movesets, and outfit. And for example, you can switch Cloud into a warrior or a black mage outfit, or assign Tifa to a black mage role, and you can make up for Aaron's absence in that regard. And I mean, I don't think that's spoiling anything by saying Aaron's absence. We'll see what happens with the story. If you played Rebirth, you know, you know what I mean. I'm sure if you're watching this video, you played Rebirth and know what I'm saying. And yeah, I think this is a really awesome system. I think the fact that, you know, for somebody like me who grew up playing a lot of those older Final Fantasy games as a kid who grew up in the 2000s with family that played them, this is really cool to see Revelation getting a lot of older systems or inspiration from those older turn-based games that we got, you know, during the SNES era, and I'm sure just being able to bring them into a game that is a love letter for a PS1 classic like FF7 is going to be awesome. Now, just from how much larger this game seems to be, with the open world seeming like it's going to be fully open world, not just, you know, open world sections like it was in Rebirth, and also the fact that you can just jump off of the high wind whenever it seems it's going to be an awesome way to travel and stuff, and finally getting the high wind in one of these remake games is going to be awesome. This game does feel like a definitive love letter to the original FF7, at least in my opinion. And what makes that even more awesome is that they're taking some of the most beloved system and traits from the older SNES Final Fantasy games like 5 and 6 and adding them and integrating them into this in some regard. Now, of course, while I understand most people would like for FF7 Revelation to be a fully turn-based game, I do love the combat in both Remake and Rebirth, and I'm very excited to see what happens here. Them adding Cid and adding Vincent and stuff, you can play as them. I think it's going to be awesome, and this, like I said, feels like a definitive love letter to the OG Final Fantasy VII, and seeing the world so beautifully done in 3D, and just seeing all of the systems and stuff they're adding from even older Final Fantasy games, I'm super excited for this. And honestly, yeah, I mean, this is one of those things where I watched this and said the identity crisis that I maybe spoke on was definitely incorrect. There's also been a ton of rumors in regards to FF7 Revelation and just all this added content and DLC we could be getting after the release of the game and stuff, at least from what it looks like. And if you do see Advent Children or Dirge of Cerberus stuff added in, I think that will be very interesting, and it'll be interesting to see just how far they take Revelation. But like I said, this does feel like an absolute love letter to the OG FF7. With all of the different gameplay changes and different things that they've attempted, Square, since they merged with Enix and Hironobu Sakaguchi left, and then they've seen so many different shifts internally and just in terms of what they've tried to do with this franchise, this feels like the game Revelation that they've wanted to make for so long in terms of just everything that we're seeing in the game. An action combat game where it's a very approachable and just, I would say, entertaining and fun gameplay style for a more mainstream audience, mixed in with different elements of from these older Final Fantasy RPGs. And I think that this is, like I said, the game that Square Enix has wanted to make for the longest time, and it's awesome to see it they're finally getting to see that through. And just a little something that I did want to add in and talk about, for me, I think what's so awesome is that you are seeing a really cool Switch 2 port of Final Fantasy X coming out. It's the 25th anniversary of that game this year, so to see that port coming to Switch 2 is awesome, and it looks great, and I probably will be picking it up. But with the fact that we're just talking about FF7 remake, I would love if they remade 10 or 9. I've seen many people call the remake FF6, and ultimately, with the fact that that was on the SNES, that might be the one that needs that kind of treatment the most. While I do think that Kefka is the best villain in any of the franchise games, either way, if we get 6 or 9 remade, that'd be great. But I think 10 is the one that a lot of people are calling for, as that was just such a beloved game on the PS2, and that's one of the first PS2 games I ever played when I was at my friend's house when I was younger. So when they wrap up the FF7 series, I would love if they continue to remake some of the older games in the series, whether it is 6 or 9 or 10. And while I would love a new mainline game in the Final Fantasy franchise to be a 3D turn-based game, it wouldn't surprise me if they do just keep the turn-based games to a series within the HD 2D style like Resonance. And I really enjoyed the gameplay in both Remake and Rebirth, and I'm sure it'll be super fun in Revelation just from everything we've seen. So to me, I wouldn't be surprised if they tried that gameplay, or they're trying that gameplay in FF17, but I think it really depends on the sales of Resonance and Revelation in these different games to see what we get in FF18, because I'm sure they've already started working and developing FF17 at this point, since 16 came out 3 years ago already. I would hope that we could see the return of turn-based combat in a mainline Final Fantasy game at some point, and I think with the fact that games like Expedition 33 and Baldur's Gate 3 prove that RPGs still sell extremely well with audiences, that Square should take a look at that. We know they've met with the Expedition 33 team and stuff, but I think with Square Enix being a publicly traded company and they're beholden to their shareholders, I don't know if the shareholders believe the juice is worth the squeeze in terms of developing a 3D turn-based RPG with hundreds of millions of dollars sunken into it. But at the end of the day, it's something that I would want, and I know a lot of fans would go out and buy that game. But based on the sales of how other RPGs have sold, and also just really depending on how well even a 2D turn-based game with Final Fantasy Resonance ends up selling, since it has the Final Fantasy name attached to it, there might be a reason for them to really push their developers, or the shareholders to push the Square Enix developers to swing big and give us a modern, definitive turn-based RPG that fans have been calling for ages now. I also believe with how the director of Final Fantasy Tactics, the Ivalice Chronicles, spoke about how they want to make a sequel to that game, and how Ivalice Chronicles sold over 1 million copies in its first 3 months on the market, that there's clearly a base there for tactical RPGs, turn-based RPGs, etc., especially a game that has the level of love and care that went into Ivalice Chronicles. The possibility of getting so many different styles of Final Fantasy games between the HD 2D turn-based combat, a tactics RPG, action RPGs, etc., this is an extremely exciting time to be a fan of the franchise, and it really feels like everything is on the up and up in the world of Final Fantasy. So much of what we've been seeing get announced feels like a love letter to the older games and characters that longtime fans grew up and fell in love with. At the end of the day, with all of the Final Fantasy games that we're going to see released soon, it really does feel like the franchise is in a much better place than I anticipated when I made that video in June of 2025, and clearly I was wrong about the direction of the games. And just in the span of 12 months, really proved me wrong in that. That's just my opinion though on everything going on in the Final Fantasy world and universe, and I do want to know down below in the comments section what you thought of anything I had to say, or just anything in regards to Final Fantasy, whether it's older games, ports, these upcoming games, etc. If you enjoyed the video though, then I'd really appreciate if you could give it a like, and if you're new to the channel or returning to the channel and not subscribed, then I'd really appreciate if you could hit the subscribe button, just as I have so much fun RPG, Final Fantasy stuff, and just gaming related content coming up soon. So if you're interested in any of that, then definitely make sure to hit the subscribe button to stay tuned. Thank you all so much for watching though, and I am out. Peace.